Welcome to another Dorset and Guernsey video. My design today is really a table setting for perhaps a lovely warm summer's lunchtime. I am hoping today is a beautiful day, and I am hoping that we will have some lovely warm summer lunchtimes to come. So the basic ingredients here are very simple. I haven't made something that's going to last for years and years and years, but something that is a little sort of transient in the fact that I'm making it for an occasion, and then after that it can be taken apart and repurposed or recycled. So when you're making this kind of thing, don't worry about having to make things particular sizes. If you have things that are, say, A4 size, if you haven't got to have them a particular size to fit a space, then go with the flow. So here we're going to be using a shape like this, made by folding an A4 piece of paper into quarters and then into eighths. It's those size shapes, we're not necessarily going to be folding them. And also some strips, which will be cut from A4 paper or card, and those you can see just fold like that. So my cardboard today is simply a piece of cornflake packet. I store these when I finish the cornflakes because they are a very good source of cardboard and they're not too stiff. I'm also using some papers. Now these papers actually are for card making really. They come in all sorts of different styles and patterns. I wanted something that was not too fussy. If you're trying to involve flowers, if you had something like that, it really would be too fussy and would detract from the flowers in the arrangement. So we're going for a simple sort of birch bark effect. When you're using papers, it's a lot easier than the actual birch bark itself. So I've cut some strips. I've cut 2 strips, as I showed you, and the double-sided tape I use a lot for this kind of thing. It really is a good idea. And the piece of paper I've used is twice the width of the piece of card, because we want it to loop over the top so that when you look down on it you can see the top of the paper and not sort of joins along the bottom. So I've put a piece of double-sided tape on here. I'm just going to peel that off and we're going to stick it onto the piece of paper like so. This piece will then wrap over there. Now before we do that, we'll put the double-sided tape on. Peel the back off. And we're going to lay onto it 3 20-gauge wires. Now if you don't want to curve this design afterwards, you don't actually need the wires. So it's entirely up to you, but you will need a base if you're not going to make a shape out of it. So I press the wires onto the double-sided tape, and then I'm just going to push the paper over onto that, like so. And then in true Blue Peter fashion, here is another one that I've also done. So we now have 2 pieces of card covered with the paper and wire running down the middle there. So what we're going to do now is to bend these gradually into a shape, or the beginnings of a shape. The wire I've kept on the inside so that it doesn't show too much on the finished design. So we have two S shapes there, and you'll see that as an S shape they do stand up pretty well. I'm just going to put a little piece of paper underneath my glue gun here. I've switched it on. I've also got a glass of water here, because if you burn yourself on glue gun glue, it is very useful to be able to stick your fingers in cold water straight away. So here I have my test tubes. Now I quite like the idea of the test tubes suspended up in the air like that. And in order to do that, of course, you will have to make sure when you glue your test tubes that they are all level with each other. Because if the test tube bases are doing this, then obviously your design will also do that. You could glue the test tubes to the bottom along like that. It's entirely up to you. I quite like seeing the bottom of the test tube and a little bit of space in between, but it's up to you how you want to do that. So first of all, with our glue gun, we're going to put a strip of glue down, and I'm using the bottom of this piece of card as a guide as to whether my glass tubes are level. And I put one in the middle, one at each end. Now they're not going to stand at the moment obviously, but you can see the idea. And then another one in the centre of the two that I have here. And another here. Now all we have to do is to glue the other side on. And you can see that if you bend it enough into shape, it will actually stand up quite well. And it's really ready for us to put our flowers in. Now, if you, however, want to keep it straight, or it's still feeling a bit wobbly, then the answer is to get a strip of cardboard, another strip of cardboard, this sort of wide, and simply glue the base of the test tubes to the piece of cardboard. But you can see that it is fairly stable as it is. Now I've obviously done this very quickly. The one that I've made previously, I did use a measure and get it exactly straight. But you can see that that makes quite a nice table centre. If you wanted to do place settings, then if you had a little base piece and 2 pieces of covered card, once again you glue your tube to the centre. And then, as I say, if you need to put your piece on a piece of board, I've put this white because my tablecloth is going to be white and I want it to sort of not stand out. If you want a definitive base, then you could put it on a piece of wood, or you could put it on a different colour piece of paper, anything like that that you wanted. But I'm just going to put a glue blob on the base of the test tube and run some glue up the base of the 2 bases here, and just hold it in place. And that's your place setting. So we've got our table centre and our place setting. If you wanted, you could put a little label on that, a little tag or something with the person's name on it. And I also thought it might be nice, if you wanted to make a wall hanging. Now it's the same pieces as the place setting, a base and 2 ends and a tube in the middle. And then all you would have to do on that would be with some string. I've chosen some blue string. If you knotted it decoratively, you can then run the string up the side, both sides, and to the back, and it will hang up for you to put your flowers in. I'll finish that off for you later on. Now, I can't decide whether I like this or not, but I have made one earlier, as they say, and I filled in the gaps with an appropriate colour sisal. And I think it's only really when I've put the flowers in that I'm going to decide whether I like it or not. I have literally just tucked it in the gaps between the 2 pieces of cardboard, so it's not impossible to remove. They will just lift out like that. But for now, that's one with sisal, one without sisal. Now, if you haven't got glass test tubes, you can also use these little herb and spice pots. These are the ones that come with your basil or oregano and things like that in. And the same principle applies, and you can actually, they're quite good because you can actually get more flowers in these, especially if you want to do a wall hanging or something. Same thing, glue the 2 sides and then glue it onto the base. So we're now going to go away and find some flowers. So when you're thinking about putting flowers in those kind of test tubes, scale and proportion is very important. If something is far too large, such as a large rose head, it really is going to look out of place. So a lot of the flowers I've chosen are quite small, delicate flowers. such as the cow parsley, the origeron, which is a tiny daisy which quite often grows in between people's paving slabs, aquilegia or granny's bonnet, an allium here which I don't actually know the name of. It was here when we moved in, but it's a very pretty little delicate white allium. Some astrantia from the garden and some Montana clematis. Now all of these things I've either had in the garden or I've actually found along the trailway where we live in Blandford. I think really that probably looks quite a nice, light, airy countryside arrangement for a summer lunch, and I will set the scene for you in the garden later. You could use, I think you could interpret this design a completely different way. I've gone for a very natural approach, but if you did cardboard covered in very bright primary colours, perhaps in each test tube, if you had one different coloured gemini or something like that for a party, it would look quite pretty as well. So it's really something that you could interpret in lots of different ways, and I hope that you'll be inspired to take this idea further.